The morning over Cedar Lake began with a sheet of still water and a silence so deep it seemed to hold the whole property in place. Chris Marshall woke in the sleeping bag he still used on the floor of the ranch house, then stayed there for a long moment, listening to the wind move through willow branches and the faint rhythm of water against the gravel bank behind the house. At 41, after 15 years as a structural engineer, he had chosen this life on purpose. He had left the world of deadlines, office noise, and other people's ambitions to build something permanent with his own hands. The 4.2 acres in Millbrook County had once been a forgotten ruin. The roof had sagged inward along the ridge line. The barn had split along its foundation. Blackberry vines and fallen timber had swallowed the eastern fence. The shoreline had vanished behind dense reed growth, leaving the lake invisible from the house unless someone stood almost in the water. Most buyers had walked the land once and moved on. Chris had studied it twice and made an offer that same afternoon. He had checked the deed, the survey, the county parcel records, and every recorded restriction before he signed. Parcel ML 4471B sat outside the platted Lakeside Pines HOA boundary. The records showed no recorded lien, no easement crossing the property for the subdivision, and no legal path for anyone to pull the land under association control after the sale. That mattered to him as much as the house itself. He had not bought a lifestyle. He had bought certainty. Over 14 months, he turned the place into a working ranch again. The roof came off and went back up as standing seam metal. The barn became a workshop with poured concrete flooring, bright task lighting, and shelving built for long-term use. He drilled a private well, added solar panels on the south roof face, and wired battery backup to keep the property running through cloudy stretches. Along the eastern line, he set 200 feet of cedar fence by hand, each post anchored deep and square. At the lake, he cleared the reeds, restored the shoreline, and built a small dock strong enough for a chair and a canoe. By sunrise that morning, the ranch looked settled at last. The cedar posts stood straight. The roof shone softly in the light. The water near the bank had gone clear enough to reveal smooth stones beneath the surface. For the first time in years, Chris felt rooted instead of rented by the clock. Pamela Covington arrived before lunch and brought trouble with her polished certainty. She was the president of the Lakeside Pines HOA, 52 years old, with curly golden hair, dark pink outerwear over black slacks, and sunglasses that hid most of her expression. She walked up the gravel drive with the easy confidence of someone used to being treated as if her presence carried authority by itself. A blue envelope rested on the gate rail, and when Chris opened it, he found a notice claiming the HOA had expanded its service area and that his property would soon be treated as part of the community. He did not react outwardly. He read the notice once, then again, while looking past it to the fence he had built, the barn he had restored, and the road that led back toward the public county line. Nothing on the paper changed what the records already showed. His land was still outside the HOA plat. The county map still placed it beyond the subdivision boundary. The survey still matched the deed. The notice had no legal force. It was pressure wrapped in official language. Pamela's visit told him more than the paper did. She took in the roofline, the dock, the fence, and the shoreline work with the look of someone assessing how much effort had gone into a thing before deciding whether to challenge it. Chris recognized that type immediately from years in project meetings. It was not admiration. It was calculation. That evening, he spread the envelope, the deed, and the survey report across the kitchen table under the overhead light and checked everything again against the county parcel database. He marked the boundary coordinates, compared the recorded plat to his own survey, and photographed the gate, the driveway, and the eastern fence line from fixed positions. Then he mounted a weatherproof camera on the barn corner, angled to capture all 12 cedar posts in one frame. By the time the first motion test came through, the ranch had become more than a home. It had become a documented boundary. The pressure shifted after that, moving from paperwork to interference. A lumber delivery was blocked when vehicles were parked across the access lane under the excuse of an easement review that the county had never filed. Chris collected the driver's report, the timestamps, and the route photos, then logged everything into a folder labeled LPHA evidence. The setback cost money, time, and patience, but it also added proof. A few days later, an anonymous post appeared on a local community page with a blurred photo of stacked materials in his yard and a claim that the shoreline work had harmed the lake. Chris saved every screenshot, URL, and timestamp before the post could vanish. He noticed that the image had been posted without its original metadata, a detail that made it useful for a different kind of investigation later. Then came the third push, a thick envelope from a law office that did not appear in the state directory. The letter inside listed violations, demanded membership fees, and ordered him to remove the eastern fence. Chris laid the pages out beside the deed and survey, then called Marcus Webb, a former prosecutor turned property attorney known for handling HOA disputes. Marcus reviewed the documents, confirmed the boundary problem, and recommended a second survey and more cameras. Chris followed through immediately. By the end of the week, 4 cameras covered the gate, the eastern fence, the dock, and the access road. Their motion alerts fed to his phone and backed up to cloud storage every 15 minutes. He hired an independent survey company, paid for a notarized recheck, and received a report that matched the original deed lines exactly. Then Marcus sent a certified warning to the HOA demanding that all contact stop and that every false claim be withdrawn. The ranch was no longer just restored. It was fortified with records, timestamps, and a paper trail that would not bend. The real break came before sunrise 2 weeks later. Camera 1 caught a white pickup with HOA markings passing slowly near the eastern boundary. Camera 4 caught a flatbed truck turning onto the access lane at 6:47 in the morning. Camera 2, the one aimed low across the fence line, caught the tracked dozer rolling down from the trailer and lining up with the cedar posts. Pamela arrived in the same dark pink outerwear, sunglasses on, with 2 staff members beside her. She stayed back from the machine, but she was close enough to direct the scene with gestures and posture alone. Then the blade touched the first post. Wood split at the concrete collar and snapped sideways into the grass. The second post went down, then the third. Dust lifted into the early light. The sound carried across the lake like a hard drumbeat. Chris felt the impact in his chest, but he did not rush forward. He stepped to a safe distance, recorded with his phone as a secondary record, and called the Millbrook County Sheriff's Office on the non-emergency line already saved in his kitchen. He reported the vehicles, the trespass, the equipment, the entry onto his property, and the damage already in progress. The blue and white sheriff SUVs arrived within minutes. The dozer shut down the moment the cruisers turned into the lane, and the sudden absence of engine noise made the torn fence line feel even larger. Chris stood near the broken posts while the officers took control of the scene. Pamela's certainty began to fracture the moment she realized the machine had turned into evidence. A county field investigator arrived soon after and measured the damage with exact attention. 6 cedar posts had been destroyed. 40 feet of rail had been knocked loose from its mounts. The total loss crossed the legal threshold for a serious criminal mischief case. The investigator photographed the track marks, the broken concrete collars, and the path the dozer had taken across the recorded boundary line. The operator cooperated fully. He had taken the job that same morning through a freelance booking, received no written work order, and had not been told there was a prior legal warning on file. Pamela, by contrast, had been present and directing the event from the roadside. By the time Chris finished his victim statement, the evidence already pointed in one direction. The fence could be rebuilt. The record of what happened could not be removed. That difference mattered more than the splintered cedar on the ground. Within weeks, the district attorney filed charges, and Marcus turned the same evidence into a civil case. The certified warning, the survey, the camera footage, the delivery obstruction, and the false letter all fit together with unsettling precision. LPHA's insurer moved quickly once the paperwork reached them, and the neighborhood started asking harder questions about how much authority the association had actually been using. Some residents reviewed their own records and discovered weak points in the HOA's membership language. Others saw how easily pressure had been passed off as rule enforcement. A community vote removed Pamela and the sitting board. The fake law office was investigated for fraudulent misrepresentation of legal authority. The criminal case ended with a plea that required restitution and a long ban from HOA leadership. The civil matter settled for damages and fees. The ranch remained exactly where the law said it belonged. On a Saturday after the settlement cleared, Chris rebuilt the eastern fence one post at a time. This time he used steel sleeves inside the concrete collars and added small laminated markers showing the parcel number and survey date beside each cedar post. The line came back stronger, straighter, and easier to defend. Camera 2 still watched the whole run from the barn corner, capturing the fence, the dock, and the lake in one steady frame. By evening, Chris carried coffee down to the dock and sat with the light fading across the water. The lake had not changed. The willows had not changed. The ranch had only become more itself because someone had tried to take it and failed. He understood then that the result had never depended on luck. It had depended on preparation, on records, and on knowing the difference between pressure and authority. The fence stood. The cameras ran. The paperwork matched the ground. And the people who thought a dozer could rewrite reality were left with consequences instead of control. If someone tried to erase your boundary, would you have the proof ready before the first machine crossed it?